Silencio Bruno! Hello there and welcome to Magic by Design. We're about to have the summer adventure of our lives in December this week as we watch Pixar's 24th and most recent animated feature Luca, released in June this year. But before we eat our weight in pasta, before trying to complete a podcast, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ken and I am joined as always by my co-host slash brother. He's Garrett. Gar, how are you?
I'm doing fine. We're nearly done. We are done. This is the last one.
This is it. We're caught up. Did you think when we watched Toy Story that we'd be here so soon?
Well, we're here exactly as many weeks away from Toy Story as we should be, so that's not a surprise.
Yeah, that's not the right way of putting it. What I meant was...
But also, yes, the time between us doing Toy Story and us being here doing Luca has flown on by, despite it being the bones of 5 months.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Unbelievable, Jeff, some might say. But yeah, we're all done. This is our last Pixar movie. We do now have one more Disney movie to do. Encanto has been released.
It has, so we're going to see that during the week, so we can bring it to you next week.
And after that, we don't really know what we're doing.
Yeah, we might do a Pixar retrospective just to tie that up.
Oh, the 5 best and worst, or 10 best and worst.
Whatever, we'll decide.
I don't think there is a Pixar 5 worst, to be fair. Well, there's Cars 3,
yeah.
Monsters University, maybe Brave?
I'd say 5 less good.
Well, Cars is bad.
It is bad.
The third Cars 2 even, sorry. Cars 3 is fine. Cars 2 is bad.
But we have a movie to review, Gareth, so let's get to it.
Ken just wants to get straight into the podcast. He doesn't want to engage me in our pre-podcast banter. Like how he nearly got the entire intro in one go.
I did. I ran out of breath.
Including the silencio Bruno.
Yeah, that's what got me.
Of course, what you will hear is him doing it in one go through the magic of editing. You won't hear him have to stumble right at the end while introducing me.
Luca was another Disney Plus exclusive due to the pandemic.
Yeah, I was upset that this was a Disney Plus exclusive. I think we were talking about this last week, where obviously cinemas were open when Luca came out. And I wanted to go see Luca in the cinema, and it wasn't in any of our cinemas. So I was just like, what the hell?
Yeah, because it came out here right as the pandemic wasn't ending. That's the wrong word.
We are still firmly in the midst of a pandemic. But in many ways. Given we announced further lockdown restrictions this very week.
But we were seeing the benefit of the vaccine campaign at the time and we were able to open those kind of things.
Yeah, I was pretty sure cinemas were open by June 18th when it came out in the US or on, well, everywhere on Disney Plus, not just the US. And I was like, yes, I want to go see Luca in the cinema. And then I'm like, oh wait, I can't. And not because it was closed, because that was the issue with Seoul. Cinemas were just not open because we closed everything down after Christmas. But this time it was open and there was no Luca. I was like, what the hell, Disney? Why aren't you giving me Luca in the theaters?
Yeah, you thought that would have been a surefire hit because people had the appetite for movies and that's a perfect movie for kids.
No, they just wanted to boost their Disney Plus numbers with this Pixar movie. This very good Pixar movie.
Indeed. Luca is directed by Enrico Casarosa in his feature directorial debut, having previously directed the popular short La Luna, which accompanied Brave's theatrical release.
Geez, that's a long while ago. That's like, Brave was 2011, wasn't it?
Yeah, 10 years.
So it took him 10 whole years for him to be like, people love that short of yours. We're currently going to give you an actual movie to do.
The visuals and themes share a lot of DNA with Luca, actually.
I don't remember La Luna. Was that like the moon one?
Star fishing kind of thing.
Vaguely remember it.
Like La Luna, the design and animation of Luca were inspired by hand-drawn and stop-motion works and the stylings of Hayao Miyazaki.
Who's coming out of retirement, by the way.
Oh, he is?
Again.
I thought he was dead.
Did you?
Yeah.
I knew he retired, and now he's making another movie.
Casarosa described the final picture as a film that pays homage to Federico Fellini and other classic Italian filmmakers with a dash of Miyazaki in the mix too.
Have you seen any Fellini movies?
I have not.
Have you seen any Miyazaki movies?
I have not.
Miyazaki is one that seems like a particular blind spot for both of us.
It does. Because he's won Oscars, there's a lot of popular stuff. I do love Asian and Japanese culture. I feel like that's something I could watch now that I'm more immersed in it than I was when I was a child. Gar, maybe we'll change the parameters of the podcast and go into Miyazaki.
Go into Ghibli, yeah, we could do Ghibli. Why not? Because by all accounts, they're like the best movies ever made.
Time will tell, Gar.
But for two people who are fans of animation, both of us, to have never seen a single Miyazaki movie, never have seen a single Ghibli movie is, frankly, a dereliction of duty, I would have said.
We're going to have to retire, Gar.
Yeah, we're frauds. We're just here, like, we cannot comment on the standards of animated features without seeing these Ghibli movies.
We're going to have to hand in our badges?
Yeah, our animation badges that Carol's wife from Up gave us. What's her name?
Ellie.
Ellie, yeah, she gave us the animation badges. And we were like, whoa, thanks, Ellie. We're going to go to a mountain in South America for you. but then we didn't, and she took her badge back. La Dolce Vita, Knights of... I don't know any of these Fellini movies. I've seen there was posters for a couple of them in the background, because I know there's a bunch of like movie posters around.
I'd say so. There was even one with a sea monster in it. Speaking of the sea monsters in the film were based on Italian myths and folklore, legends of sea dragons that would come to the surface to help and to get into trouble. Mm-hmm. So mischievous beings.
They don't really look like sea dragons.
No.
I guess they have tails.
There's another one about an octopus, but I didn't really read into it.
At least they're not tails, they're fins.
Luca had its world premiere at
Your Home on Disney Plus. The world premiere went up on Disney Plus, and we all got to sit there and world premiere it, just like we were in that theater in Los Angeles. You've been to that, the fancy one that they do all the premieres.
Chinese theater.
Yeah, just like the Chinese theater, except it's in your own home, and you hit play on Disney Plus.
I went to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That is some prestige theater right there. Is that the Michael Bay one?
Yeah.
Ugh.
It was the only option at the time, and I wanted to see something in there for the sake of saying that I'd seen something. And it was a very nice theater, but not a very good movie.
No, Michael Bay ruined the Turtles by making them steroid freaks.
Yeah, they look so weird. What happened to the cool practical ones?
Yeah, that were in frickin' Power Rangers. Remember that Power Rangers in Space crossover?
Good stuff.
Those were the days.
Anyway, the film had its premiere at the Aquarium of Genoa in June this year.
Did they show it to the fish?
They did.
Because like COVID restrictions mean we can't show it to people, but we can show it to fish.
It was originally set to be theatrically released, as we said, but due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, heard of it, the film was released direct to streaming on Disney+. Luca doesn't really have much of a box office gross to speak of. You can't really call it a flop. It had a limited run in the US and was released sporadically in other territories as cinemas opened in the wake of the vaccine rollout. So I think it's about $45 million.
It flopped around like a fish, Ken. Because there's fish in the movie. Ken.
Good job, Gar.
Do you understand my joke?
I do understand your joke. Well done.
Thank you.
The film received positive reviews from critics with praise for the visual style, voice acting, and nostalgic tone.
This is a really good movie. This is a really good movie.
Do you know what? I think I slept on it the first time.
Yeah, I would have said, I think the first time it's like good B-tier Pixar. I'm like, no, this is great Pixar. This is a great movie.
This is Pixar at its best, I would say, because I've been thinking about it ever since.
And, like, I'm not going to say it's not very Pixar, because it has, like, the fantastical element of the sea monsters and kids turning into sea monsters and back, and that is quite Pixar. And the deeper themes are very Pixar, and we'll talk about them in a minute. But it just doesn't feel like the rest of Pixar. It feels much like lower stakes. It's just about a little, like, triathlon.
Yeah, critics have noted it as slight. I don't think that's a slight, for want of a better word.
Oh, wordplay.
I think it's just that, as you said, the stakes are low. The story is essentially about three kids having the summer of their lives and developing lasting bonds. And that's a very muted story for Pixar.
And, like, there are deeper themes. There are, like, considerable deeper themes if you really mind for them. But, yeah, on the surface, it is just this simple little, like, kids on bikes, kind of literal bikes, multiple kinds of bikes story. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. It's just nice.
I was sitting there watching it because, as you said, we caught up now, and I was like, this film shares a lineage with Toy Story, but as you said, it doesn't feel like it. But that's not a bad thing. It has its own identity, which I think Pixar was lacking when they were getting deep into sequels.
And it's interesting. I felt it watching Soul, that I was like, I'm watching this too recently after I'd watched it. Mm-hmm. You know? I felt myself getting a little bit bored. Not really through the fault of the movie, but just through the fault of, like, obviously I watched it last December and then watched it again this December, which is a year gap. It's a pretty decent sized gap. But even then, I was still like, I was just kind of bored by the plot mechanics of it. As opposed to this, which I have watched more recently again, because I'm pretty sure I watched it the first weekend it came out.
Yeah, me too.
And here we are 5 months later, and I'm just like, God, I'm engrossed in this movie all over again.
Yeah, this world that they've built is a real joy to be in.
It's just a lovely Italian village.
Moving forward here to the animation. Free holiday alert, Garth Casarosa and Pixar animators travelled to the Italian Riviera to prepare for the film.
It's a good thing they got that in before COVID.
According to Casarosa, the transformation process went through several iterations as it was difficult to get right. He also noted that finding a unique look for the film was a challenge because essentially you're using the same tools. He wanted to incorporate imperfection because he's very taken by hand drawing, but computers are often programmed for perfection.
I think, animation-wise, this is the best Pixar have done, like, melding their really fancy new technology with their more traditional house style.
I agree, because like the one thing that strikes me is like they have some really photorealistic elements, especially the water. They're flexing the hell out of that water, and the rocks especially, and the beach. The beach looks real.
The pebbles on the beach, Ken. When you look at them, it's like, oh god, there's like 6,000 pebbles on the beach, and they're all different colors and different sizes, and someone went through all that effort to make all those pebbles one way or another. I know they do fancy AI technology now. It's like they can churn out pebbles through a pebble generator that they create there in Pixar because they're magicians. But still, it's one of those things. It's like no one's looking at the pebbles on the beach. Nobody.
I was mesmerized by them.
And I've said it multiple times on this podcast talking about Pixar's animation. If there was no pebbles on the beach, if it was just sand, no one would care. No one would be like, that beach should have pebbles. This film is terrible. It's like, nope. We gotta put pebbles on the beach, and they gotta be different kinds of pebbles. And we'll throw in some seashells and all the other things that wash up on the beach, and it will look majestic.
And we've criticised other films for trying to combine these two styles. This one really succeeds because talking about the Miyazaki influences, the clouds especially, they're not as photorealistic as other elements. They're more pastel or hand painted, especially in the fantasy sequences. They're all very much almost storybookish, but like they don't jar with each other. I think that largely comes down to the characters though, because they've moved into a different direction with these characters. They went from trying to make them look as realistic as possible in Soul to here they're caricatures, but they're really pleasing to look at and they really fit with the style.
You know what they remind me of? They remind me of like 90s Cartoon Network shows or Nickelodeon shows, except modernized in HD. Or in 3D. Like, they have that kind of, like, expressiveness. They have, like, that Hey Arnold feel to them.
Yeah. What's interesting for me is the thing that popped into my head when I was watching this was that they have a stop motion quality to them, reminiscent of Ardmore. Apparently Casarosa said that was one of his major influences. So not so much Wallace and Gromit and how they look, but just kind of the texture of the characters looks almost like a stop motion clay model.
The clay, like the clayness to them. But even then, like, it's hard to describe because, like, it is realistic. It's not like super stylized. It's not cell shaded. It's not like super clay. It is relatively realistic looking animation, but they've I don't know how to describe it, how they've pulled off this trick of kind of making something that is like broadly speaking realistic looking but still has that like animated Pixar quality feel to it.
To your point, Gard, they've managed to replicate the summer tan right down to sun damage. You can see Alberto has a scar on his arm and it's pink because it didn't tan. And like there you can see the freckles. So it's not that it's not realistic, but they have this pleasing surreal look to them that you know they're not real, but you don't really think about it because you're just invested in the characters.
Yeah, they've created a consistent world, which like it's the big thing we gave out about the Good Dinosaur, in which they didn't. Like you had those caricatures, like the classic animated character models, and then you had the freaking absolutely gorgeous, stunning photorealistic landscapes. Didn't make any sense. As opposed to here, it's like they do have like gorgeous, stunning, photorealistic to a degree landscapes, but still they managed to make them mesh with not entirely photorealistic characters. I don't know how they've worked it. I can't even describe how they've worked to pull this off, Ken.
No, it's very hard to put into words. I think it's because Porto Rosa is very colourful and vibrant, almost like a diorama in a way. So like the characters fit within it because if you're going for that Ardmore stop motion effect, they're very tactile. The whole look of the film is very tactile, and I think that's why I gravitated towards, because in a world where everything's created in computers, something that looks like it's handmade is much more appealing.
And it feels like it's a real place. Probably because they just modeled a real Italian village and just threw it up there on screen. But like it does feel like a fully functional, fully featured Italian village.
And we've gone to Italy before, Gar, as you remember, in Cars 2, excuse me.
And of course, Pinocchio.
But
if you want to go way back.
In the Pixar realm, but it didn't have any charm or appeal.
Yeah, actually it was quite the opposite, I remember. That the race they did in Italy felt like soulless. It's like, this is pretty and it looks good, but there's also like no character to it, as opposed to this where it's just oozing with character.
Side note as well, I love the design of Massimo. He's so big and imposing, and the way his expression goes from you can't see his eyes, but then when something really registers with him, you see his eyes. It's also a nice little misdirect how they let us assume that he lost his arm in a fishing accident, but he was actually born that way. The thing I really liked was they didn't really make a big deal of it. It was just a passing comment and treat it as normal. That's the proper way to do representation. You don't have to do a big flashing light or make a big deal out of it, you know?
They should have had a giant spotlight come down from the top of the village on top of his arm. It's like, I don't have an arm.
But it's okay.
But yeah, he made a little joke out of it. Because he was on the boat with Alberto, and Alberto was looking at the arm. He's like, you want to ask, don't you? And it's like, sea monsters, because the whole thing is like sea monsters. So it would like be easy. It's like, the sea monsters took my arm and that's why I hate them. It's like, nah, I just never had an arm.
That brings us nicely onto the story, Gar. The film is set in 1959. Casarosa described the 50s and 60s as a golden age that feels timeless, with the music and designs inspired from that period to capture a little bit of timeless summer.
Because like, he is 50. He was born in 1970.
Sure.
1971 even. So that would have been the period in which like his parents would have grown up, and like when he was growing up there would have been nostalgia for that period. So it's interesting to see how that would have influenced his decisions here, as opposed to like, he didn't go back to a period that he had nostalgia for, which would have been the 70s and the 80s, when he grew up in Genoa in Italy. So it's interesting that he went a little further back into more like his parents' nostalgia, or the era right before he was born.
I think it's a good choice though, because if you date it in the 70s and 80s, it has a certain connotation to it, where, as he does say here, it is more timeless to be in a period where there's not technology and there's not...
Oh, they didn't have any technology back in the 50s.
You know,
they lived in black and white.
They do, but you know what I mean. It's just less cluttered.
I feel like in pop culture in general over the last 30 years, we have driven the 80s into the ground.
Yeah, we really fetishize the 80s. Like, every show that comes out now is set in the 80s.
Yeah, it's just like we have just wrung that 80s nostalgia dry. And like, I get why, which is the reason I found it so interesting that Casarosa went back further beyond his own nostalgia. Because the reason we get so much stuff in the 80s is like, kids grew up, people in their 20s and 30s were there, are the people who are writing things now, and they write their nostalgia. Perfectly understandable, everybody does it. Which is the reason we get loads of stuff in the 80s, because that's what people remember, that's their nostalgia. And we'll get more stuff in the 90s as time goes by, and God forbid we'll get 2000s nostalgia.
Nobody wants the noughties back, Gar.
Like freaking Robbie Williams' Angels playing as like the nostalgic song. Ugh. But like that's the reason that'll happen. So it is why I found it interesting that Casarosa went back to the 50s and 60s, which is not the period in which he had nostalgia for. It was before he was born. He couldn't have nostalgia for it.
Casarosa based the relationship between Luca and Alberto on himself and his own best friend, also called Alberto.
Oh, was he also deeply in love with him? Deeply in love with him? I suppose Alberto's more deeply in love with Luca than the other way around.
Well, he does say that he pushed him out of his comfort zone. To your point though, Garth, some have seen Luca and Alberto hiding their true sea monster identities as an allegory for people who are members of the LGBTQ plus community. Sorry if there's another name for it now, I'm sorry. Feeling as though they need to hide their true selves in order to be accepted. Casarosa said that this was unintentional, and his original vision for the movie was to explore the time in a child's life before romance. He has since welcomed the interpretation of after the film's release, also stating, "While I identify with pronouns he, him, and I am a straight man, the themes of diversity, acceptance, and inclusion in our movie are dear to my heart." He's also stated that some people have interpreted the movie as being a metaphor for refugees and immigrants as well. And again, he said this was not part of his plan.
So what the hell was the movie about then?
He said that we are aware making the movie that this is a wonderful journey of owning your own identity and coming out with it.
Oh yes, he even uses the words coming out.
Whichever that identity is, I thought that everyone would bring their own identity to it. I think that's a very healthy and balanced way to look at your art though. He's not labelling it, he's not insisting that people view it a certain way. He's perfectly open to people owning it the way they want.
Well, yeah, there's the long-held theory that once the artist puts the art out in the world, you have no ownership over it anymore. It is owned by whoever watches it, whatever the hell they want to take out of it. You can't be like, no, that's not what it's about. Sorry, that's what I took from your art. Get over it. But like, come on. The longing looks Alberto gives Luca. Come on.
The side-eye glances he gives Julia because he hates her because she's taking Luca away from him.
The frickin' final scene of the movie, chasing after the train, holding hands, sobbing, come on!
The classic holding hands until they're forced to let go.
There's a very famous story about The Nightmare on Elm Street 2, in which it's the gayest movie you'll ever see in your life. And the person who played the lead, the person who wrote the movie, is like, oh yeah, it's totally an allegory for coming out. That Freddy is inside him and he's struggling, he's trying to keep it inside of him in order to not let it out because it's just bottling up your feelings and it doesn't want to come out. And then the director's like, I don't know, I didn't know any of that. Yeah. So, like, watching this movie in which two children have to hide who they are from a viciously conservative town for fear of being hunted due to who they are, while, like, offering each other longing looks and lying and looking at the stars with each other in their clock tower or whatever it is. It's a tower. Lighthouse? I guess it's a lighthouse? It's probably a lighthouse. But lying there, come on. Like, this movie is incredibly gay. Come on.
Yeah, that was my reading of it. But, you know, I'm glad that he hasn't shut it down at least. There are people, Ridley Scott, for example, who would be like, no. Like, did you see his whole thing over the Last Duel recently?
Oh, he's getting mad at the millennials and their phones. That's the reason the Last Duel did badly. The millennials are on their phones.
Even though his Gucci film will do well because of that, because the whole Adam Driver and Lady Gaga thing has been memed to death.
Shut up. Stop it. Stop giving out about millennials. Also, millennials are freaking like 40 now. You're giving out about Zoomers. Get your expressions right.
One thing, Gar, I didn't really buy Jacob Tremblay's performance as Luca in the beginning.
I thought he was really good. Pure being mean.
It's not bad and it's perfectly competent, but in the beginning it feels like he's just saying the lines.
No, I think he's really good even at the start of the movie when he's talking to the fish and he's having fun with the fish.
Yeah, it's funny, but it just feels separate from the visuals. I don't know.
What have you got against Jacob Tremblay? Which movie do you hate him in? Is it Good Boys? Did you hate him in Good Boys?
I haven't seen many of his movies, to be honest.
He's in whatchamacallit, Dr. Sleep. He's in that too. I think all of the principal cast are very good in this movie.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. And as I say, I had my reservations about Jacob Tremblay, but then as it progressed and got into the meat of the film, where a lot of the emotional heft is, he delivered. So maybe I was just being a bit critical in the beginning.
You have a vendetta against this child.
Jim Gaffigan is familiar, but he adds a unique flavour to the performance of the dad. We also have Jack Dylan Grazer as Alberto, a really excellent performance because he presents himself as all bravado and knowing everything, but at the end he's just really vulnerable and a lost kid who needs direction and companionship.
Yes, he's compensating for deep feelings of inadequacy with a deep facade of overconfidence.
Did you find that a bit unsatisfying though, how they tell us that his dad is gone but they don't really get into what happened?
No, I'm fine with that. It's not about that. It's about his feeling of abandonment, which is the reason when, he's deeply in love with Luca, obviously. But the other reason he's upset when Luca's dragged away from him is he finally found a friend. After all this time, the friend dragged him off this island, and now someone's taken him away from him too. It's the feelings of abandonment that his father has put in him, bubbling back up to the surface as the person he has fallen head over heels in love with is also abandoning him for science. My favorite thing about Luca is, Luca's not even particularly interested in Julia. It's just the science that Luca's interested in. The world.
We do get Little Mermaid vibes in the beginning. He's in this world that he finds stifling. He wants to go out and see more and collect more knowledge. So it does vibe with the character we see at the beginning. Also, Emma Berman as Julia, really energetic and precocious, but really natural as well. So not annoying. Great.
You haven't even mentioned the best role in the movie, which is Saverio Raimondo as Ercole Visconti.
Yes, I have a note here. Ercole as the villain.
It's a tremendous villain. My favorite thing about Ercole is they give you no indication of how old he is.
Yeah.
Ercole could be 16, could be 17, could be 38.
Yeah.
Looking at him and looking at his face and looking at his mannerisms and his little children minions, it's this could be a grown-ass man trying to compete in this triathlon.
Yeah, which creates a very sinister vibe to it, but he's just a bully that you want to see get his comeuppance, and he does in the end.
Yeah, it's a very good performance. It's a very good character, and his dodgy mustache. It's the
his obsession with people watching him eat a big sandwich.
He has the kind of mustache that a person who has just been able to grow facial hair has, and they have a weird amount of pride in it, even though it's horrific looking. But it's because, I can grow facial hair now. Look at my dodgy mustache.
That does say to me that he's around 16.
He's probably 17, 18 tops. But yeah, it's funny that there is a vagueness to his age that I quite enjoy, because you can read him as a 25-year-old bullying these children.
It's good that they never label that. They never conclusively say. I have another note here, Gar. Machiavelli is the best Disney cat since Figaro in Pinocchio, as you mentioned earlier.
It's the Italian cats, Ken, I'm telling you.
You can also see the Miyazaki vibes in the design of Machiavelli.
A cat with a mustache?
Yeah, he looks like Ron Swanson. Obviously, he looks like his owner as well. I think that's the idea. He's also highly suspicious, and the way he appears from nowhere is hilarious.
And he's the only person that finds out they're sea monsters, because they somehow constantly reveal themselves to the cat, and only the cat.
And there's this scene where he's underneath the table and slowly rises up, and he has a really perturbed look on his face. Good stuff. So we've criticised some of the third act tension here, Gar, in recent Pixar films. We see this tension actually come out a bit earlier, mid-second act this time. Luca and Alberto has a fight. Alberto's in the wrong, but then Luca sells him out.
I believe Luca's in the wrong. He's abandoned his friend.
Yeah, and it doesn't even work out because Julia is a smart kid and puts two and two together, so his whole lie and selling him out lasts literally an hour maybe.
I think the moment where he sells him out works really, really well. Like that little moment of betrayal. It's like, it's so small that he's just like, Luca shouts sea monster at him. And like, there's just the look of betrayal and the sound of Alberto's voice. And he's like, Luca, for real?
Yeah.
This is what you're doing right now?
Both times I got a little gut punch out of that. It's like, oh.
Yeah, it's just such... And it makes sense on both regards, because he doesn't want to reveal himself to Julia, because then he'll be taken away from science, and he needs to learn about the world. And Alberto is in a position of great jealousy at this moment, because obviously Julia and science is dragging... Alberto was clearly a horrible anti-science person, but dragging Luca away from, their romantic love story of wanting to wander Italy on a Vespa. Again, gayest movie you could possibly come up with. Two people want to ride a Vespa around Italy? Come on.
I think a lot of kids are going to hold this movie dear in years to come.
Yeah, and damn well they should, because you can read it as frankly any form of otherness. That's probably kind of the point, that sea monsters are your stand-in for any kind of marginalization, that you have to hide your true self, be it race or creed or gender or sexual orientation or whatever people are horrible bigots about. That's what it's a stand-in for. So I think the kids will get a lot out of this movie in many different ways.
And even if you want to view the relationships as platonic, we all relate with that summer where we met friends and we form these fast bonds that last. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's amazing how when you're around people and, they're in this village where there's not much to do other than this big race, that they just bond over it. So I think it's something that everyone can relate with, regardless of where you're standing at. We're getting towards the ending here now. But one thing I wanted to go into before we talk about the ending, the change. They don't really go into much detail about that. I would have liked a bit more on that, I think. How do you feel?
No, I'm fine. I was talking to Brother Ed when this movie came out, and that was his problem too. It's like, they didn't explain how they turn into people. It's like, I don't care. I don't need them to explain, the deep lore reasons why they turn into people when they get out of water and turn back into sea monsters when they get in. I don't care. You just tell me that's the way it is. Fine. Cool.
No, for me, I just wanted to know where the fear of people was coming from and why they were trying to keep Luca away from the surface when...
Because the fishermen captured all the sea monsters.
They've clearly been there themselves.
Well, the grandmother has. We're unclear about the parents.
Well, they were able to walk straight away. Again, actually very good sequence when Luca is trying to learn how to walk. He's flopping around like a fish and very good.
He does not understand the concept of walking. But it's very clear why they fear people. It's because people fish. There are fishermen. They fish the fish. They are trying to catch them, which is the reason their job under the sea is to protect the fish.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, later in the movie, then Luca goes out in the boat with Alberto and sells out the fish. The very fish he was trying to protect.
Hundreds of them.
And he's just like, yeah, I need something here, so I'm going to sell out all these fish that were my friends at one stage, I think.
But I think that leads to the ending being somewhat flawed, because the whole town does a U-turn pretty quickly. I know Massimo is very imposing, though, and he didn't know who they were and then realised there was no difference, If you're positing that the reason they fear this world and the reason that they don't want to embrace the change is because of their friends and family or people being hunted, then I just don't see how they quickly let go of that when that has been the culture of their town for generations.
A very simple reason, Ken. Because we fear what we do not understand. And Luca and Alberto, if I spent the entirety of this movie running around the village, interacting with everybody in the village, worming their way into the hearts of the people in the village. And when they are revealed to be sea monsters, we understand that they are the same as us. Again, going back to the standard feeling of otherness, when you understand that this person is the same as you, regardless of the qualities that make you different, we are all still fundamentally human beings and flawed in all our own ways that have very little to do with our physical characteristics or other things that people are, again, horrible bigots about. So I think that works. I think it works perfectly fine. It's just like, yeah, we understand who these people are, and even though they are sea monsters, we still know who they are and that we care about them.
I think that's a good summary of it, because there was a bit of a disconnect for me there, but the way you mention it actually does tie together very nicely,
Yeah, I'm smart.
You are smart. The ending for me is very satisfying. So this is another case where they stick the landing. Alberto sacrifices what he wants so that Luca can be happy, but he also finds a place for himself.
Yeah, the little relationship between Massimo and Alberto is very good in this movie. The little moment when Luca and Julia come back without Alberto, and Massimo's like, where's Alberto? And he's like, oh, I don't think he's coming back. It's like, I'll go out and look for him just in case. You know, just there's a bunch of lovely little lines in the movie like that that are just like, oh.
Yeah. And I think it's because Massimo probably when he was a child, had that sense of alienation or otherness, and he identifies with Alberto. It's not even made a big deal of it. It's not dramatic. He just quietly gets up and goes to look for him.
Gets the lantern and goes outside. It's a lovely little moment in a film that is just stuffed full of lovely little moments.
Yeah, I didn't find myself welling up, but I just had a strong lump in my throat at the end, just because, as you said, the culmination of all these little moments creates a very lovely movie.
Yeah, Alberto giving up his long-held love so that Luca can go pursue his pursuit of knowledge. It's heartwarming.
That's the ultimate love, in a way. Not just sacrificing something that you wanted in the Vespa, but his instinct would have been to cling on to Luca and keep him there, but he knew that he had to let him go for him to be happy.
By the way, how much did Vespa pay to get the product placement in this movie?
Yeah, that didn't even occur to me.
All those kids growing up being like, I love this movie, Luca, I now want a Vespa. I don't know why I want a Vespa, but...
Which way do you think that went? Do you think that Vespa were like, can we be in the movie? Or do you think they were like, we want it to be authentic, so let's...
It's probably that, to be fair. It probably is we need to clear Vespa, as opposed to Vespa being like, we'll give you $7 million to make a film based around our brand.
Yeah, that's the true origins of Luca.
But yeah, it is funny how built into this movie, and they treat Vespas as this great, liberator. There's nothing more free in the world than riding a Vespa through the countryside of Italy as the other Vespas jump in and out of the flowers.
In fairness, this film made me want a Vespa.
I don't know how to ride a bike, but I want a Vespa. I'll crash it, but I want one.
But overall, Gard, this felt like an old school summer kids movie in the truest and best sense. Some of the movies I remember growing up watching, like, Stand By Me, Sandlot, a lot of those films I gravitated towards as a kid, and it just captured that feeling perfectly, and it's just a warm and colourful world. I felt safe and happy there, and I wouldn't be adverse to returning there.
Yeah, as I said, we watched this film 5 or 6 months apart from originally seeing it 5-ish. And I was just as engrossed in it, if not more so than the first time. It's just a lovely movie. I
just find it flashing into my mind all day, just like little scenes here and there and thinking about it and all the themes, and it's like I want to live in Ponderosa. I think that's basically it. Yeah, it's just a warm and colourful and funny and playful movie. We didn't even talk about the parents arc, where they're going through the city trying to find Luca, and there's the wonderful scene where the mother plays football in the plaza and starts kicking kids into a fountain. Yeah, that's actually a very fun running gag. I had it in my notes but I forgot to cover it. And dropping water balloons off buildings trying to find which one of these is a sea monster. And I love the moment when the penny drops that they're like, oh wait, we don't know what he looks like as a human. She's like, I know what my kid will. Oh wait. She turns around a plaza full of children. It's like, oh no, I don't know any of these. I do love how the sea monsters refer to humans at the start of this film as land monsters. Yeah, I quite enjoy that. But yeah, it's that kind of mutual misunderstanding, isn't it? That they both don't trust each other, but they've never really come together. That's because they don't understand each other, Ken. But we know, we see that the grandmother has visited many times. There are two sea monsters living in the village who reveal themselves at the end of the movie as well. So it's like there is cultural crossover, but just they don't really know about it. Gar, of all the great things that this movie does well, we haven't even talked about one of the best parts for me, which is the score by Jan Romer. So good. He was brought on board to score the film, his first collaboration with Pixar. The soundtrack contains songs from many famous Italian operas and singers. Nicole will do one later. But the score is wonderful because it has those notes of Italian opera, folk music. There's some electronic music in places, I think there's a theremin at times. It also feels inspired by Ennio Morricone at times, especially if you've seen Cinema Party. But again, it evokes that thing in my mind of adventure, of curiosity, that kind of endless summer. Yeah, it just has that nostalgia. That's what I get when I hear that score. Yeah, it's one of those scores that you listen to and have nostalgia for the first time you're listening to it, which is a remarkable feat. That's I don't know how you do this, wondrous musician man, but you somehow create a sense of nostalgia for a thing I'm hearing for the first time, and that's a remarkable feat. And there's a sense of playful mysteriousness to it as well, as these kids explore and discover the world, because they don't understand anything about the human world, and particularly there's a great deal of misinformation perhaps about the human world in this movie, and it's just a lovely score. It's so nice. It's so good. And he should do more Pixar movies, because very good. It has a very strong sense of identity. I listened to it again separate from the movie last night as I was going to sleep. All the best Pixar films, whether it be Toy Story, Incredibles, Up, have a score that's unique to that film. I couldn't place it anywhere else. It's reminiscent of other things, but it's completely unique, which is very rare these days in animated film scores.
And it's more interesting when you hear, like, Randy Newman, we talked about this with Cars, which is like, oh, this is like his Toy Story B tracks, you know? And if you watch Princess and the Frog, which Randy Newman did the music for as well, you will hear...
We talked about this in the podcast. The start of it is identical to Toy Story.
Yeah, there's just such a Toy Story feel to it. So I'm interested if I watch more things that feature Dan Romer's work. Will I get that same feel? It's just like, oh yeah, this is Luca. This is his sound.
This is the Romer sound.
I don't think I've seen anything else he scored. Beasts of the Southern Wild is the big one that I haven't seen.
He did something else that was pretty big recently, his most recent project, but I can't remember what it was.
Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah, yes.
The movie version.
Luca is a relatively young film, so the legacy here is quite light, but there are some points.
It should probably win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature.
I think it's hands down the favourite there. That's a good call.
Because what we haven't seen Encanto yet, so we'll hold judgment on that, but it's certainly better than Raya.
Luca is the first Pixar film to nearly exclusively be produced in the homes of Pixar employees.
Even the credit at the end is like made in our slippers around the Bay Area.
Yeah. So, like, as we talked about last week, Soul was finished from home, I think. But this was nearly exclusively produced at home because the studio was shut down for the pandemic.
Because this would have been 15 months into, like, broadly working from home, like, as the world shut down in March 2020. So, while the, like, pre-production on this film probably started a little beforehand, like, the actual production in earnest probably entirely happened in COVID times. Because, like, this film was announced in July 2020, so...
Yeah, and the fact that they put it together in, like, a year. I know, obviously, there was a development period that was probably lasted 2 or 3 years, but...
Because, like, yeah, because, as you mentioned, they visited Italy, which they wouldn't have been able to do.
But it's amazing how the bulk of this film came together in a year. A follow-up short named Ciao Alberto was released on November 12th.
Which I meant to watch, but I didn't.
It actually is a nice epilogue to the film. It shows the deepening of the relationship between Alberto and Massimo, and it's a lovely little short. Again, I got a little thrill out of being back in Porto Rosso, and I was just watching it with a feeling of utter contentment.
You know what? I would love a Disney Plus TV show that is just like antics, you know, just that thing they're getting up to. It's just set it in the following summer when they come back to town, or maybe like Christmas break or whatever, when they come back to Porto Rosso for the summer. And
like a one-off special?
No, just like a 10-episode TV show, 20-minute episodes, where they just get up to something, you know? They just get up to something for 20 minutes and we all have a good time.
It's funny you say that, Gar. Casarosa and the cast have expressed the desire for a sequel or follow-ups. Disney sent a survey to Disney Plus subscribers to ask if they'd be interested in seeing another movie with the characters from the world of Luca.
See, I don't think I'd be interested in another movie. Because I would ask myself the question, unless you finally have them declare their love for each other. That's your second movie, Alberto and Luca elope and finally travel the country on their Vespa. But other than that, it's the reason I suggested a TV show, because it's like lower stakes. You don't really need to justify it with some like overarching reason to do a second movie. You can just revisit this world in nice little chunks in a way that is as low stakes as this movie is.
I think though that Disney are more open to that because we've had Monsters at Work, we've also had Doug, the series, so I think that Pixar are opening up their idea of how to continue these stories, which is great, but to date no plans have been announced for any follow-ups anyway.
Yeah, so don't do a movie, do a TV show, because I really don't think a movie would justify its existence. Like, this story is a nice little self-contained piece. If you were to revisit it for like a full 90-minute story, I have no idea what you'd do with it. Can make me a Luca sequel. What do you make?
Apparently Casarosa wanted to do a Parent Trap style thing where they tried to get Massimo back together with his ex-wife.
No. See, that's like, no, I don't care. Make a TV show. Make that a plot in the TV show. I'm fine with that. But yeah, TV show, not movie.
Gar, I think we've covered why we like this movie and why we think people should watch it and why we loved being in this world. But overall, when I watched this movie, maybe because I was watching it from home, or maybe because I had this notion that Pixar had largely lost their way, even though Soul was a great return to form.
Yeah, and you had Coco and you had Inside Out. What are you talking about it that they lost their way? Get your cynicism out of here.
Exactly. I don't know where the cynicism has come towards Pixar releases, or maybe because they're like, oh, they pitched it as a digital release, so I thought it might be lesser than their previous efforts, you know. But I think this is Pixar firing in all cylinders, doing everything that they do well. They don't necessarily focus on a lot of world building here, but they create a rich and detailed world.
But they do a ton of world building. This is literally world building. That's the reason this world feels so nice to live in, because it feels like this complete place. It's just like, I want to be there. I just want to sit there and watch this man eat a large sandwich. That is the world that they live in.
This film is also pasta porn. I want to I want to eat all the pasta in the film.
Oh yeah, that does make you want to eat pasta. Pasta is delicious looking.
But it made me nostalgic for my summer youths. It made me nostalgic for travel to far-flung places that are off the beaten track. And this whole world of Luca is my happy place, Car. I don't know. It just makes me happy to be in this world, which is why when I watched the short, I had such a lovely, warm feeling. And I think I'll be returning to Luca for some time to come.
I think your assertion that Pixar is like lost it is like really unfair when you actually look at their work, because like they had like the bad stretch, like the honestly bad stretch of Cars 2, Brave, and Monsters University, like back to back to back. Which one of the Cars 2 is their worst movie, Monsters University and Brave are two of their least inspired movies, and then you had Inside Out, which is, like, honest to goodness, one of their best movies. Then you had A Good Dinosaur, which, alright. Finding Dory, one of their better sequels. Like, it actually is, like, a really enjoyable sequel. Cars 3, much better than Cars 2. Coco, great movie. Incredibles 2, disappointment. Toy Story 4, great movie. And then, like, we're on a stretch where they're making 4 straight movies that are, like, new, that have no ties to anything else. You get Onward, you get Soul, you get Luca, you get Turning Red. Even Lightyear, which is obviously in the Toy Story universe, is completely unrelated to the other Toy Story movies. So, like, they are doing new and fresh things, and also many of those new and fresh things are excellent.
Yeah, I think this whole strategy of going towards new properties has been good for the studio, both creatively and in terms of the actual output. But I really like that, as you said, Casarosa has been at the studio for a long time. It's not that he's new, but we're seeing these new voices and new directors, and it's creating some really interesting stuff. So I don't know where the cynicism came from, but this rewatch just taught me that on balance, Pixar still have that magic in abundance.
Yeah, and like you still get some of the mighty Pixar players. Like you get Lee Unkrich, you get Pete Docter still making stuff, but it does feel like a new generation of Pixar where you do get Enrico Casarosa. Like the directors of Turning Red and Lightyear are both new Pixar directors, so you're getting new ideas and new people and new voices in making these movies. Even Toy Story 4 was made by Josh Cooley, who's his first directorial feature. So like you are getting the new voices of Pixar in here, pushing into a new generation with new ideas and not just making car sequels, which is as much as you can hope for. But like taking things back to Luca, it is a small, low stakes, relatively slow paced movie. Not in a bad way. The movie's only 95 minutes. It literally flies by. It's actually one of the fastest 90-minute movies I've watched in a while.
That's one thing. Like we said, some of these recent films were too long. I felt like this was too short. I could have stayed there for a bit longer.
Yeah, and it's just an utterly pleasant movie. In every way. It's pleasant to look at, it's funny, it's like the music is just absolutely gorgeous. You just like, even if the plot and the story and the characters were bad, just looking at it and listening to it would be enough. But the plot, the story and the characters are interesting, and as you said, the deeper theme of otherness of these sea monsters as your stand-in for any kind of marginalization will have a lot of people connecting with this movie on a deeper level and seeing themselves in these dumb stupid sea monsters. And that is as much as you can hope for from children's entertainment, which we shall never forget. These are children's movies. Children are meant to see themselves in them and learn something from them. And that is very much the case for Luca. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. It's one of the best Pixar movies. And I don't think I gave it that credit when I watched it 5 months ago. But that's the fun thing about watching all of these Pixar movies, one after another, after another, after another. And you can put it in that context of what the studio does. And you can be like, this is very different from what they usually do, and as good as their best stuff.
All right, Pixar Pescatori. That's Italian for fisherman.
Thank you. I did not know that.
It's nearly time for us to return to the deep for another week. Resident Magic by Design singer Nicole is coming up in just a few moments with a song to see us off to Genoa. But first, we need to cast our fishing nets of self-promotion.
Woohoo!
New episodes of Magic by Design land every Monday where all magical podcasts are downloaded. Stop by the website at magicbydesign.buzzsprout.com to find a full list of podcast platforms. We are literally everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode of our dear show. If you have social media, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Magic by Design Pod, on Twitter at Magic Design Pod, and on Insta at Magic by Design Pod. If you're a fan of the show and want to cross us off your Christmas list, why not give us a review on your podcast platform of choice? If you want to give us an extra stocking stuffer, you can also share the podcast on your socials, or perhaps recommend the show to a fellow Disney fan via your mouth.
Or Pixar fan. We've now reviewed all of them.
Yeah. your
Every
pick.
single one of them. Well, actually, no, there's one new one out. We'll have to cap that off next week. But if you're like, oh, geez, I like these guys. I want to know what their opinion is on The Incredibles or Ratatouille or Fantasia is, it's all there, waiting for you to be put into your ears.
If you give us a 5-star review, you could win a Vespa, which may or may not be made up of random junk we found at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes, and you will ramp off a turtle and it will break.
Join us next week as we jump back into the world of Disney with a review of their 60th animated feature, Encanto, which is in theaters as we speak. But until then, stay safe and remember, some people, they'll never accept you, but some will. The key is to know how to find the good ones. Now then, Nicole is here for the grand finale of this week's episode with her version of O Mio Babbino Caro featured in Luca. Thanks for listening and see you next week.